Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Philip McMillan, and I'm here to give you some breaking news with regards to hantavirus. Now, you may not have ever heard about this, but I'm going to share with you some details about it because this is an important story that is developing. But right at the start, we're going to share a BBC clip talking about what is going on. And before I go into this, just a reminder coming up in the next 2 days is why is toxic liver disease rising across every age group. Very important information. We are keeping you ahead of the science. So let's jump straight into what is actually going on. There is a ship, a cruise ship that is located somewhere off, I think, on the Canary Islands. And here is the BBC News report that gives us a little bit more information as to what exactly is going on. Let's hear what they had to say.
Hantavirus have been formally confirmed after 3 people died in a suspected outbreak on a cruise ship off the coast of West Africa. A British crew member requires urgent medical care and a passenger from the UK remains in a critical but stable condition. The World Health Organization says it has identified a total of 7 cases in the outbreak. Our correspondent Pumsa Filani has more.
What we've heard overnight from the cruise line owners, a company called Ocean Expeditions, is they've confirmed that they are currently working on plans to carry out a medical evacuation of 2 crew members who are still on board that MV Honduras cruise ship off the shoreline of Cape Verde. Now, this is because they've not been allowed to disembark the 149 passengers who are from various nationalities around the world. The local authorities there have expressed concern that they don't know the full details of the disease, and they're concerned what that would mean for the population. So
this is an important breaking story. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is that I've been following this, and I looked at hantavirus a few years ago when I was looking at a template for severe COVID. And believe me, the diseases are not actually dissimilar in terms of how it seems to cause severe disease. So the important thing is that straight off, I'll tell you that anybody who is thinking of developing a vaccine, which they are doing, they're looking at an mRNA candidate, please study the pathophysiology of this disease before you go doing unusual things. Just to share with you a few basic principles as to what exactly I think is going on. But here first is an overview of the hantavirus. It's a rodent-borne viral disease causing vascular leak, lung injury, and kidney injury. It's an RNA virus normally carried by rodents like rats, and humans are accidental hosts. And the main primary disease is damage to the endothelium lining and leakage of fluid out. And this is why people can get very, very sick. And the main problems it causes is either the pulmonary syndrome, where you can get fever, cough, and breathlessness with pulmonary edema. That means leakage of fluid into the lungs. Or you can get the hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome. This is more like dengue kind of presentation with fever, platelets are low, protein in the urine, and kidney injury. Now, it's a pretty lethal disease. And when it's normally transmitted, it usually is from dust contaminated by rodents or urine or droppings of saliva. And person-to-person spread is rare, and it's only primarily linked to the Andes variant of this virus. And as I said, it will infect the lining cells of blood vessels, as well as some immune cells like macrophages. It causes problems with plating and platelets and clotting, and immune activation. This is the bit that got people confused in COVID as well. It's the immune system that does the damage, not the virus itself. And severe cases can progress very rapidly and require supportive care. And as I said, rodent, urine, feces to human, human to lungs. The critical thing that I want you to remember here, person-to-person spread is rare. Now, the reason I'm highlighting that is because what you have here is a ship that you had already 3 deaths. And the ship sailed from Argentina in early April. And within, I think, about a week, the first case came up. The partner of the first case, I think, has also passed away. I think, if I remember rightly from the reports, she was trying to travel back to Europe and got unwell en route. And then someone else died who was on the boat, and the 2 other crew members are sick. And there does not seem to be a rodent problem on that ship, because that's the first thing that you would want to look for. What that suggests to me is that this is person-to-person spread. Now, that has got to be the most serious concern, which is why the WHO would be involved, because if we are having person-to-person spread, now this does happen with the Andes variant, and we have had person-to-person spread. It's primarily in Argentina and Chile, but it would have meant somebody picked it up in their travels, brought it to the ship, but they are then having multiple person-to-person spread, because 3 people have died and I think 7 people overall were sick. 2 crew members had to be airlifted out. And so what you have here, it appears that this virus that does not normally travel easily person-to-person seems to be spreading person-to-person. This may be why I think the Cape Verde, I think, wanted to keep them at a distance, quarantine until they know what is going on. Here is the bit that I always highlight. When it comes to unusual disease presentation, as what happened in 2020, the assumption from the scientific community was that this was just an accidental, natural situation. I said from the start that this made no sense. The SARS-CoV-2 didn't normally behave like this and shouldn't be able to do this. Then we hear about a furin cleavage site, and we didn't ask enough good questions. What that means to me is that if the SARS-CoV-2 had been interfered with and made more transmissible, and we didn't address the issue of it, chances are people will be emboldened to try it again. And listen to me, here is the problem. Some people may think that if you got past COVID and you are okay, there is nothing that can touch you. Well, let me just tell you, this virus is a beast of a virus. If you thought COVID was bad, I think it's something like 40% mortality with hantavirus. And so if you think about the 3 people that died out of 7, that's almost, that's 40 something percent. And so we are talking about a lethal virus that appears to have the capability of spreading person to person. That is absolutely frightening, because it shouldn't do this. Now, what was the delay? This is the other worry, is that there seems to be a delay between the infection and the onset of disease, and it can be up to 8 weeks. And so if this is relevant with regards to the ship, because they came from Argentina, you may soon see similar patterns occurring in Argentina. If you have a virus that is therefore spreading further, this in itself could be a significant risk to everyone across the world. Don't underestimate it. Let me just make you listen to a little bit more from the BBC News report before we close out.
They've so far only allowed just the 2 sickly crew members to be disembarked and evacuated once plans have been made to perhaps Europe, but everybody else is meant to then set sail, possibly to Las Palmas, which is an island off the Canary Islands, but that would take about 8 days of sailing or so, where they hope to then continue doing further testing there if they are allowed to disembark those passengers.
Pumsa, one British national being treated in an intensive care unit there in Johannesburg, where you are. Tell us a little about hantavirus, how it spreads, how do they think the passengers came infected?
Well, we know that it's an incredibly dangerous disease. It is rodent-borne. Humans often contract it when they've come into contact with the excrement of either rats or mice, saliva or urine. So at this stage, it's suspected that during their expeditions, during this 2-month-long cruise, where they were going to various points, bird watching, they may have come into contact with what I've just mentioned there. Now, the key problem, Karen, at this moment, is that this is a disease that has a long incubation period. It can take anything from 1 week up to 8 weeks to show symptoms. So even though currently the numbers of the people that have been reported seem to be fairly low, it's something that officials have said needs to be watched even when people return to their home countries, to make sure that they don't later then show symptoms.
And just
So pausing, yes. So that's where we are now. As I said, this is a very serious virus, and we are going to be watching this space. So the final points that I will give to you are that the main reason why this virus does so much damage in terms of mortality is because it causes the blood vessels. This is the endothelium lining of a blood vessel. And what happens, it gets very leaky. And so fluid from the bloodstream leaks out into the tissues. And if this happens in the lungs get very heavy, congested, and people can't breathe. And this is part of the reason why it has been so lethal. So this is a big story, in my view, something that we need to follow. Let us hope that it is only a minor blip, but we have learned, don't underestimate the seriousness of what appears to be just the starting point of something. We need to keep an eye on it. We need to keep abreast of the science and look for innovative ways to find solutions. As I said, keeping abreast of science. Why is toxic liver disease rising across every age group? Everyone should be interested in this. And guess what? Even check and see if free tickets are available. If not, donation tickets are available. You can donate anything. You need to come and listen to this kind of information. Keep up to date. Make sure that you are well educated about what is happening. Thank you very much for being with me. I'm Dr. Philip McMillan. I'll continue to bring you up-to-date information. Have a great evening.